Stress, stress management, and counseling. Stress is defined in terms of how it impacts physical and psychological health. It includes mental, physical, and emotional strain. Stress occurs when a demand exceeds an individual's coping ability and disrupts his or her psychological equilibrium. Stress occurs in the workplace when an employee perceives a situation to be too strenuous to handle, and therefore threatening to his or her well-being. The work of Hans Selye is generally considered the first major discussion of stress as a phenomenon in and of itself. Selye was interested in the response of the body to demands made upon it, and believed that this response was nonspecific. By this term, Selye meant that whatever the external or internal demand on the body, the person's response to stress followed a universal pattern. He termed this pattern the general adaptation syndrome. The three stages of the GAS are illustrated on the figure on the right. First is the stage of alarm. The alarm stage is the body's initial response to the stressor. There is a brief period of lowered resistance followed by a time of heightened resistance. In this stage, the body prepares itself for quick response by such means as increased heart rate and blood pressure and a release of glucose to provide energy for action. If you were crossing the road, and noticed a car speeding towards you, your rapid increase in speed from a walk to a run to escape being run over is an example of responding to stress in alarm stage. If the stressor is prolonged, the second stage is resistance. In this stage, the immediate responses of the alarm stage are replaced with responses that promote long-term adaptation. The concept of homeostasis described earlier comes into play during this stage, since the body must return to equilibrium. However, there is continuing effort on the part of the individual to adapt or habituate to the stressor during this stage. For example, after working in a noisy factory job for several months, Peter reports not being bothered by the noise. However, he does have frequent headaches and he has started grinding his teeth at night, resulting in occasional neck muscle spasms. In this case, the workers have learned to tolerate, over an extended time, the stress of excessive levels of noise in the job environment. However, his physical symptoms suggest that the noise is still experienced as a stressor. The third stage is that of collapse. By this term, Selye meant that the body cannot go on coping with stress indefinitely. The energy for continued adjustment becomes depleted, and the individual becomes exhausted. Thus, the third stage is characterized by a loss of resistance to the stressor, and exhaustion, collapse, and even death can occur. Prolonged stress during combat, when a soldier eventually collapses not from a wound but from accumulated fatigue, hunger, thirst, anxiety, and tension, would be an example of the stage of collapse. Work stress is caused by demands and pressure from both within and outside of the workplace. While it is generally agreed that stress occurs at work, views differ on the importance of worker characteristics versus working conditions as its primary cause. The differing viewpoints suggest different ways to prevent stress at work. Different individual characteristics, like personality and coping skills, can be very important predictors of whether certain job conditions will result in stress. In other words, what is stressful for one person may not be a problem for someone else. 4 categories of stressors underline the different causal circumstances for stress at work. There are task demands, role demands, interpersonal demands, and physical demands. Task demands: this is the sense of not knowing where a job will lead you and whether the activities and tasks will change. This uncertainty causes stress that manifests itself in feelings of lack of control, concern about career progress, and time pressures. Role demands: role conflict happens when an employee is exposed to inconsistent or difficult expectations. Examples include inter-role conflict, when there are 2 or more expectations or separate roles for one person. Intra-role conflict, when there are varying expectations of one role. Person-role conflict, when the person's ethics are challenged. And role ambiguity, when there is confusion about their experiences in relation to the expectations of others. Interpersonal demands: examples include emotional issues, such as abrasive personalities, and offensive coworkers, sexual harassment, which is directed mostly toward women, and poor leadership, such as lack of management experience, poor style, and cannot handle having power. Physical demands. Many types of work are physically demanding, including strenuous activity, extreme working conditions, travel, exposure to hazardous materials, and working in a tight, loud office. A person's status in the workplace can also affect levels of stress. Stress in the workplace has the potential to affect employees of all categories, and managers as well as other kinds of workers are vulnerable to work overload. However, less powerful employees, such as those who have less control over their jobs, are more likely to experience stress than employees with more power. This indicates that authority is an important factor complicating the work stress environment. Economic factors that employees are facing in the 21st century have been linked to increased stress levels as well. Researchers and social commentators have pointed out that advances in technology and communications have made companies more efficient and more productive than ever before. This increase in productivity has resulted in higher expectations and greater competition, which in turn place more stress on employees. The following economic factors can contribute to workplace stress: pressure from investors who can quickly withdraw their money from company stocks. Lack of trade and professional unions in the workplace. Intercompany rivalries caused by global competition. And the willingness of companies to swiftly lay off workers to cope with changing business environments. Stress can impact an individual mentally and physically, and so can decrease employee efficiency and job satisfaction. Stress can impact an individual mentally and physically, and so can decrease employee efficiency and job satisfaction. Negative or overwhelming work experiences can cause a person substantial distress. Burnout, depression, and psychosomatic disorders are particularly common outcomes of work-related stress. In general, individual distress manifests in three basic forms: psychological disorders, medical illnesses, and behavioral problems. Psychosomatic disorders are a type of psychological disorder. They are physical problems with a psychological cause. For example, a person who is extremely anxious about public speaking might feel extremely nauseated or may find themselves unable to speak at all when faced with the prospect of presenting in front of a group. Since stress of this type is often difficult to notice, managers would benefit from carefully monitoring employee behavior for indications of discomfort or stress. Physiological reactions to stress can have a long-term impact on physical health. In fact, stress is one of the leading precursors to long-term health issues. Backaches, stroke, heart disease, and peptic ulcers are just a few physical ailments that can arise when a person is under too much stress. A person can also exhibit behavioral problems when under stress, such as aggression, substance abuse, absenteeism, poor decision-making, lack of creativity, or even sabotage. A stressed worker may neglect their duties, impeding workflows and processes so that the broader organization slows down and loses time and money. Managers should keep an eye out for such behaviors as possible indicators of workplace stress. Stress in the workplace can be, so to speak, contagious. Low job satisfaction is often something employees will discuss with one another. If stress is not noted and addressed by management early on, team dynamics can erode, hurting the social and cultural synergies present in the organization. Ultimately, the aggressive mentality will be difficult to remedy. Managers are in a unique position when it comes to workplace stress. As they are responsible for setting the pace, assigning tasks, and fostering the social customs that govern the work group, management must be aware of the repercussions of mismanaging and inducing stress. Managers should consistently discuss job satisfaction and professional and personal health with each of their subordinates one-on-one. A combination of organizational change and stress management is a productive approach to preventing stress at work. Stress management refers to a wide spectrum of techniques and therapies that aim to control a person's levels of stress, especially chronic stress, to improve everyday functioning. If employees are experiencing unhealthy levels of stress, a manager can bring in an objective outsider, such as a consultant, to suggest a fresh approach. But there are many ways managers can prevent job stress in the first place. A combination of organizational change and stress management is often the most effective approach. Among the many different techniques managers can use to effectively prevent employee stress, the main underlying themes are awareness of possibly stressful elements of the workplace and intervention when necessary to mitigate any stress that does arise. Specifically, organizations can prevent employee stress in the following ways. One of them is intentional job design. Organizations can design jobs that provide meaning and stimulation for workers as well as opportunities for them to use their skills. Organizations can also establish work schedules that are compatible with demands and responsibilities outside the job. Many organizations allow telecommuting to reduce the pressure of being a certain place at a certain time, which enables people to better balance their personal lives. Organizations should also monitor each employee's workload to ensure it is in line with their capabilities and resources. It is also helpful to maintain clear and open communication. Teach employees about stress awareness and promote an open dialogue. Avoid ambiguity at all costs, clearly define workers' roles and responsibilities, and reduce uncertainty about career development and future employment prospects. Organizations should also provide and maintain positive workplace culture. Provide opportunities for social interaction among workers. Watch for signs of dissatisfaction or bullying and work to combat workplace discrimination, based on race, gender, national origin, religion, or language. Lastly, ensure employee accountability. Give workers opportunities to participate in decisions and actions that affect their jobs. And introduce a participative leadership style and involve as many subordinates as possible in resolving stress-producing problems.